Since this is about finding solutions, we're going to now turn it over and listen to a discussion that we had just a couple of days ago with one of our great coaches, Lacee Jacobs. Lacee has been coaching for over 20 years. She's an executive leadership coach. She ran the DEI unit here at BTS as well for a number of years. But she's one of these people that whenever I chat with her, I think we should be recording it every time because she just comes across as sensible and knowledgeable and some really great advice. So we're going to roll this tape.
So, Lacey, you watch these videos. You heard from some of the stakeholders in the field about how principals are doing this year. Obviously, we're hearing some difficult stories about feelings of isolation, of burnout, frustration. We're losing a lot of good people in the profession.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering, you as a professional leadership coach, hearing these issues that principals are grappling with, how would you focus your help with them, with the principals?
Yeah, Max, that's a great question. I do believe that it is imperative as a coach to go into these conversations being completely present, to the people that we are coaching. It's a very delicate time right now, and people are struggling in ways that um, definitely I've seen this before and not to this magnitude. So, what I have been noticing, I would throw in another word that I've been seeing with some of the leaders that I've been coaching, which is despair. In some situations, people are coming in more hopeless than they have before in a coaching conversation. So, being present with them and creating the kind of space where they can explore these emotions, I think is critical. I do believe if someone has not had coaching, there's this there's this idea that it's not a place for emotions, that it's supposed to be just about work. And that's not true. It is a perfect place to have a conversation about things like burnout and isolation, frustration. So, more than anything, I think as coaches, we have to lean in and create the kind of space where someone like a principal would feel safe enough to share what's happening for them. Because they're in such a public facing role, it's hard to trust people. It's hard to believe that they deserve a space where these types of conversations can take place. I often hear people say at the end of a session, that felt like therapy. And I remind them, we didn't go into their childhood, we didn't go into diagnosing them in any way. And that, yes, hopefully it felt therapeutic. I believe it is when you don't typically have a place where you can have conversations where someone has your back and listens in a way where it gets to be about you.
I'm glad you mentioned that. You talked about trust and what we're hearing, at least in Canada, and I'm sure it's the same in the US. The higher you go up in the ranks of education, and as you talked about trust, who can you trust? Who's got your back? It really just seems that the higher up you go, the fewer connections, the more isolated you become
Mhm.
in these leadership roles. And I'm wondering, from a coaching perspective, what helps in these situations when you are trying to support principals and education leaders that just feel isolated in their roles and lonely? And I'm sure you must hear that a lot, right?
I do hear that a lot. And the first thing that I do as a coach is I acknowledge exactly where they are. I find that to be incredibly important Because if there's any sense when I'm coming into these conversations with someone that I'm trying to convince them that where they are is not okay, or that they're broken and they need to be fixed, versus someone who needs a space to explore what's going on for them, that trust will potentially be broken immediately. And I find when I come into a conversation from that place where my job is not to fix anyone, my job is to create the kind of space where they can share that their psychological safety, then people start talking right away because they're yearning for a place like that. You know, when you don't have a place to be yourself, to be authentic, that can create a sense of isolation and loneliness, that alone.
Yeah, thank you, Lacey. We're certainly in strange times at the moment, and what we're hearing is a lot of the tension and stress is falling back onto the shoulders of school leaders, superintendents, principals. Um, so while we may not be able to stop some of this outside noise, are there things that we can suggest or do to help leaders um, in these times? You talked about creating safe spaces in the coaching scenarios, but are there things that superintendents can be doing to support their principals and their school leaders?
Yeah, much in the way that a coach would lean in during a conversation with the principal, I believe it would be important for a superintendent to do the same. Sometimes I hear people say that they don't have time. I believe that we don't have the luxury of not doing that. Uh, Being able to have a conversation and letting a principal share what they care about, their values, learning more about what's important to them. In fact, why did they decide to do this work to begin with? I love this quote by, it's not by Viktor Frankl, it's Nietzsche, I believe, that said it. And Viktor Frankl mentioned it in Man's Search for Meaning. And he talks about when your why is big enough, you can bear almost any how. What I have noticed in coaching conversations or facilitating small group coaching for superintendents and for principals, that they love it when they can reconnect to why this work matters to them, when they're reminded why they decided to do what they do. And that gives them a sense of purpose, renewed purpose. I think it energizes them and inspires them. And it's just even sitting in that space with someone can make a difference. It can shift these feelings of isolation and loneliness into recognizing that they do not forget that they make a difference every day in the lives of many people.
Yeah, wonderful. So it's the way that I look at what you were saying is it's more of a they can have conversations with their school leaders and principals, which are more around purpose and less around duties. And I'll throw something else out there because it's come up previously in some of our coaching work as well. Is there value also in the superintendent showing some vulnerability themselves during these times? Does that help build relationships?
Absolutely. Vulnerability is essential because what we're really speaking into when we talk about vulnerability is remembering our humanity, seeing our humanity. And I do notice that leaders have a difficult time with that because they're so task driven. So giving them an opportunity to see, if I'm a superintendent and I'm talking to my principal, when they are able to see the superintendent take off that armor and relax and to be human, it gives them permission to do the same. As I listened to Mark, something came to me that I've seen. It's beautiful for a leader to be other driven. And you mentioned some things, and I think Mark mentioned three things. He talked about listening, he talked about not being judgmental, he talked about being compassionate. And I believe the thing that sometimes leaders forget is that doesn't just apply to other people. Being a leader who can listen to their own experiences and their own feelings, their internal world, and navigate that space successfully by being compassionate and empathetic, that's also equally important. Not judging every act and decision that they make, being willing to have a growth mindset and learning from those experiences, that's important.
Picking up in the conversation around how to retain your principles that we're doing in this first episode, when the superintendents are dealing with these feelings of isolation or burnout, or as you've mentioned as well, imposter syndrome. If there was a one sentence or a cliff notes statement that you want to provide to sort of sum up, what is the mindset or the perspective that superintendents need to take in order to help their principals in these times?
Mm, me too. It's whatever I'm asking of my principals, I need to include myself. If I'm asking my principals to get coaching, to do the work, to develop themselves, me too. If I am encouraging my principals to take time for themselves, to practice self-care, me too. Whatever is true for those that I'm leading, me too. I cannot exclude myself from that equation. That's what I would say.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Lacey. As always, words of wisdom.
Thank you.
So, much appreciated.
Sean,
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got to showcase Lacey, putting a face to our professional coaching. We were talking about listening, and I mean, coaches are professional listeners. There's a difference there to mentorship or mentoring. A safe, confidential space, the importance of that, helping school leaders and superintendents reconnect to what really matters. And, I love that statement she said anything about leading by example. And you know what I wrote down? I thought, it's okay to be coached.
Yeah.
Right? It's a good thing. It's a thing that leaders need. And at least in Canada, there's a bit of a culture around that. And really pleased with BTS Spark being new in Canada to be pushing this movement for coaching as a way to support our school leaders who, by virtue of what we've shared today, are in need of this level of support.
Yeah, exactly. And what I take out about from what Lacey was talking about as well is not only it's okay to be coached, but it's okay to show your emotions. It's okay to be human. And in fact, it's not only okay to be human, it's beneficial to show your humanity, for yourself, give yourself some grace, but also for others. And that's really what we're trying to encourage school leaders. It's a different mindset of leadership. It's not that superhero that has all the answers, because nobody has the answers. It's how can you show a little bit more vulnerability? How can you grow relationships? How can you keep being curious? How can you keep trying to solve problems? And you do that via connections and networks. And those networks can include a coach, but they definitely need to include people all around your leadership circle as well.